Let me thank all of you for being with us in our city, and let me apologize for being a little late. But we had 600 metropolitan Atlanta business executives meeting in our Forward Atlanta program with the editor of Forbes magazine, and I had to introduce him first. But this is more important. And this is more important not only because of the contribution that IBM has made to our city by being one of our major employers and by making the most significant investment in our city of the decade, the new wonderful tower, which is incidentally was where this business group was meeting. But what IBM has meant to this city is really related to the quality of life. Now, I must assure you that I am prejudiced. I'm prejudiced because my middle daughter is an IBM systems engineer. And she got the job before I was mayor. And she got it in California. But we see the impact of your work in our community. And the only thing that frustrates me is that we are not able to spread it more rapidly. It brings tears to my eyes to go into the day nurseries of children who come from our poorest areas in the city of Atlanta, children of single-parent households, children whose parents don't take the time to read with them or give them any preschool training, children who come in almost physically and emotionally retarded, and to see them sitting down at 4 and 5 years old at IBM computers and in a matter of weeks beginning to write 15 and 20-word sentences of their own making, and to watch them over a period of a year really and truly use the writing to read system to teach themselves to read, it not only makes me cry, it makes me terribly humble and frustrated that I haven't yet learned what to do with one of these damn things. And then on the other end of the spectrum, not only do we have in every one of our day nursery programs run by the city for children from poor neighborhoods, but every Atlanta public school has the Writing to Read program in kindergartens. And I have watched that program, and I see in that program the beginning of a new generation of educated young people. In the middle phase, I see my own 14-year-old who really has had time to do everything but study. And I watched him through the middle school years when it was important at 12, 13, and 14 to establish his manhood, to begin to develop peer group relations so that his leadership skills can evolve. And what that means is really not getting along with teachers. That if you get along with your peer group, it means kind of being a thug and a hoodlum. If you're going to really be liked by the girls, it means paying more attention to the girls than the teacher. So middle school is not a time for studies. And yet, if one is handicapped during those 3 important years, that's when we lose most of our young males. And yet we were able to take him into a program in the summer, and in a matter of a few weeks, the Atlanta public school system giving him a set of computer something or other that he could sit down and work on at his own speed, and bright kid that he is, catch up and be able to go on into high school, able finally to maybe be mature enough to settle down and hopefully, still hopefully, begin to study. But from the middle school to the children on to the upper end of our city, we find that your program is making an extremely positive impact on our city. We have 8,000 employees. Following the averages of our city, we know that there are about 16% that can't read and write. We began to try to track them down. And we began to try to create incentives because it was taking us 90 days to put in water meters. And as fast as this city is growing, if it takes you 90 days to put in a water meter, you've got to figure out that the city is going to come to a grinding halt if you can't figure out what's taking you so long. It wasn't long before we realized that many of the people who came into city government just after the war came in from rural areas. And this was before integration, so we're talking not about blacks but whites. Came in from rural areas without the ability to read and write. Because they were hard workers, because they were good workers, they became the supervisors. And so we find people at the supervisory level that are using their fantastic intelligence and a whole lot of trickery to figure out what the work orders say. And so they say, I left my glasses home, what does this say? Or they go to somebody else and they say, hold this for me, and they ask them what it says. And a whole network of things to cover the fact that they can't read. And yet when we finally said as a city, we're going to set up the PALS program in city facilities in cooperation with the city public school system, and we will not only let people take off to do their reading work, we will pay them overtime for coming after school, after work. And by paying them overtime, well, you know, you pay the high-price executives. All of you all getting paid come in here for this convention. And we never realized that after-hours training for the lower levels of workers who can't read is just as cost-effective, probably a lot more, than maybe bringing some of you all to this meeting. And so from one end of the spectrum to the other, we find your work extremely integral to our work. And then when we fail, we end up with people in jail. It cost us a minimum of $22,000 a year to keep a person in jail. And we find that the single most pervasive reason why people are in jail and keep coming back to jail is the fact that they can't read. And so we're trying to find ways to put the PALS program in the jails. And we're hoping that one day before long we're going to have judges that will sentence people to literacy. And no matter what they do, when they get to learn to read and get a job and become functional in the society, their sentences can be commuted and they can go on to become more productive citizens. We've seen that work not only with people who can't read, but we've seen people who can't read who have become drug addicts and prostitutes and simply completely given up. And we've seen them with a little support and a little training become productive citizens in our society. Now, I guess you know by now, in addition to being a mayor, I'm a preacher. And I know I'm preaching to the saved, but sometimes you all get so caught up in your figures and in your bonuses and your test scores and your achievement models and that sort of thing, that you forget that really what you're about is developing human life. And that's what I call saving souls. And so when I see a group like this, and when I try to communicate to you some of the religious enthusiasm that I feel for the technology that's at our disposal, what I'm really trying to do is to help us all to realize that there's not a single problem in our society that we cannot solve with the coming together of all of our human and technical resources, and your presence here affords us an opportunity to do that. We welcome you, and God bless you.
Mayor Young, thank you very much. Thank you very much.